UK leaders have committed in writing to deliver more powers to Scotland, following the country's failed independence referendum on Thursday. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown announced on Saturday that he and leaders of the country's main parties, including Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron, Labour Party head Ed Miliband, as well as Liberal Democrat leader Nick Clegg, had all committed to the devolution of powers. Brown said Scotland would be guaranteed higher levels of state funding and greater control over healthcare spending. The leaders will present the package on September 22nd. As Ukraine and Eastern rebels came to further agreements to ensure peace in the region, 3 huge explosions at a munitions factory rocked the outskirts of Donetsk, sending clouds of smoke into the air. The plants producing munitions and industrial explosives had been bombed, according to municipal authorities. Meanwhile, a memorandum was signed early on Saturday for the withdrawal of heavy weapons and all foreign fighters from a 30-kilometer-wide buffer zone. With U.S. health officials saying on Friday that in a worst-case scenario, there could be over 500,000 people infected with Ebola in West Africa if no additional action is taken to contain it. In Liberia, local leaders are taking greater leadership roles in the fight against the Ebola virus that has claimed more than 1,300 lives since March. Religious leaders have expressed concerns over the need to implement medical safety protocols in their communities as people continue to carry out traditional burial rites. However, local leaders are hopeful that a strong emphasis on community engagement will complement the country's official efforts. 49 Turkish hostages held by Islamic State extremists for more than 3 months have been released and brought to Turkey. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu greeted the freed Turkish nationals on Saturday, which included diplomats, children, and special forces from a Turkish consulate in Iraq who were kidnapped on June 11th. Turkey refuses to say how the group was freed, and Ankara had imposed a media blackout on the hostage crisis. While the NATO members said it won't take part in U.S.-led operations against the Islamic State, they have been criticized for supporting and arming Islamist elements against Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. Heavy fighting between Houthi rebels and government forces in Yemen continues as the rebels advance to the outskirts of the country's capital. The building of Yemen's state-run television caught fire after shelling on Saturday, and the station broadcast a written message for national and international organizations to intervene to save its employees. The country has been ravaged by political turmoil since an uprising during the so-called Arab Spring overthrew President Ali Abdullah Saleh. With the UN Summit on Climate Change taking place this Tuesday in New York, concerned citizens and organizations across the globe are holding local forums and protests to encourage world leaders to commit to action as global warming gains momentum. On Sunday, September 21st, tens of thousands of people are expected to gather in New York City to participate in the largest ever march demanding solutions to climate change. Dozens of countries will hold solidarity protests.
The ambassadors to the OAS met in Guatemala to discuss the actual impacts of the drug war, which is based on militarization and the use of extreme violence to undermine the power of cartels. The strategy has very low efficiency and at a cost of tens of thousands of innocent victims.
Que las posiciones sean las mismas.
We want to align our positions so that these can be presented to the United Nations session of 2016. When we will discuss new policies that countries can adopt in their fight against drugs.
2 years ago, President Otto Perez presented a plan at an OAS session to put an end to the actual drug war strategy led by the United States. He proposed another strategy that combines the fight against crime with a gradual legalization of drugs. His plan was to be based on the realities and decisions of the people.
Esperamos que esa resolución sea unánime.
We want a unanimous resolution with this assembly of the OAS, in which the whole continent shows that there is will to keep on discussing new policies that can change the way we understand the issue of drugs.
The Guatemalan president's proposition was backed by Mexico and Colombia, countries that suffered the greatest impacts of the war on drugs. But the Central American countries and many others didn't agree on changing the strategy then, and instead maintain alliance to the United States plans.
La primera conclusión precisamente
The first conclusion of our report is that the drug problem affects all the countries and all the continent, and that this affects each country differently. So part of our conclusion is that there should be a great flexibility so that countries, following a common strategy, adopt practices and policies that they consider best suit their interests.
After session, the debate surrounding anti-drug strategies in the continent shows that new initiatives could put in doubt the actual war on drugs outlined by Washington, which forces nations of the region to spend huge amounts of money on a war that spurs violence and death. Gerardo Torres, teleSUR, Central America.
On Friday, El Salvador revoked the house arrest of the country's former president, Francisco Flores, of the right-wing Arena Party. Flores is accused of embezzling $5.3 million and stealing an additional $10 million donated by Taiwan after the 2001 earthquakes that killed over 1,250 people. Hundreds protested in front of the former president's house, demanding that he be imprisoned.
Semillas en Yacahuazú, a new miniseries of documentaries investigating the lives of 20 Bolivian guerrillas who died fighting alongside Ernesto Che Guevara in their country, premiered in the vice presidency of the plurinational state of Bolivia on Wednesday, September 17. We spoke with Cuban director Froilán González in the Cuban embassy in La Paz.
It is very important to rescue this historical memory, because revolution and change do not simply arise out of nowhere. They come from a cumulative process that we must not forget or deny, because those who are not familiar with their history don't have their feet sufficiently planted on the ground to be able to face the present, and much less the future.
The first combatant explored in the series is Apolinar Aquino Quispe, a guerrilla who died fighting the CIA-backed Bolivian army in August 1967, just weeks before Che himself would be illegally executed. His granddaughter attended the film series premiere, and she says the documentaries help to inspire younger generations to continue struggling for the same ideals.
Antes, las guerras eran con armas, sangre.
We used to have to fight with weapons, blood and death. Now we the youth, those who share this ideology, we can do it with our way of thinking and with our own actions.
Desde nuestras acciones propias, ¿no?
This October 9th will mark the 47th anniversary of the death of revolutionary Che Guevara in Bolivia, who continues to inspire generations of people around the world to struggle for social justice. Reporting from La Paz, Bolivia, this is David Doherty with teleSUR.
Facts that have marked the course of history. Productions designed in the English language and made for the English-speaking world. This is Documentary. Watch it on telesur.net/English. teleSUR, wherever the news, you'll be there.